the vast stretches of the Arabian desert, where the golden sands seemed to meet the sky, there lived a gifted falconer named Tariq. His skill with falcons was unmatched in his village, and stories of his remarkable birds and his precise training methods had reached every corner of the land. Tariq's heart was tied to the desert, and his soul seemed to soar with the birds he cared for. His most prized falcon, a magnificent bird named Shams, had been with him since he was a young boy. The falcon had been a gift from his late father, a reminder of the bond between them. One day, an invitation arrived for Tariq. It was from the royal palace of a distant kingdom, where a grand tournament was to take place. The prize, a legendary falcon, said to be the fastest and most majestic in the entire desert. The invitation promised wealth, glory, and honor for the winner. But more than that, Tariq's heart stirred with excitement. The chance to see such a creature, and perhaps add it to his collection of birds, was an opportunity he could not resist. Tariq set out on his journey with Shams by his side, the bird perched proudly on his arm. The road to the tournament was long and treacherous, winding through the dunes of the desert. Along the way, he encountered other falconers traveling to the same event, each with their own prized birds. Among them was a young man named Idris, a falconer from a neighboring kingdom. He was tall and confident, with sharp eyes that seemed to study everything around him. At first, Tariq and Idris exchanged little more than polite nods. There was an unspoken rivalry between them, one that had been brewing even before their meeting. Tariq's kingdom and Idris's kingdom had always been at odds, with history filled with tension and suspicion. Despite their shared love for falcons, there was an underlying mistrust between the two falconers. Tariq believed that Idris, with his polished appearance and expensive equipment, was nothing more than a showman, lacking the true connection with his birds. Idris, on the other hand, saw Tariq as a simple man from the desert, someone whose rough ways could never match the sophistication of his training. But fate, as it often does, had a different plan for them. On the eve of the tournament, as the falconers gathered near the royal palace, a group of bandits descended upon them. With swift and calculated moves, the thieves overpowered the falconers and stole several prized falcons, including Shams and Idris's bird, which was equally magnificent. The bandits vanished into the desert as quickly as they had appeared, leaving the falconers in shock and despair. Tariq, heartbroken by the loss of Shams, found himself standing side by side with Idris. The rivalry that had once existed between them now seemed insignificant. They both had lost something precious, and the only way to retrieve their birds was to work together. At first, their differences were evident. Tariq's knowledge of the desert and his survival skills were second to none, but Idris was more accustomed to the comforts of royal courts and had never ventured far into the wilderness. However, both falconers understood that if they were to find their birds, they would need to rely on each other's strengths. With Tariq leading the way, the two falconers trekked deep into the desert, following the faint traces left by the bandits. They encountered harsh winds, scorching heat, and treacherous terrain, but through it all, their bond grew stronger. Tariq taught Idris how to read the signs of the desert, the way the winds shifted, the patterns of the dunes, and the paths animals took when they traveled. Idris, in turn, shared his knowledge of the royal courts, where secrets were exchanged and information was often gathered through subtle means. As the days passed, they grew to trust each other, realizing that their skills complemented one another in ways they had not imagined. Tariq learned to appreciate Idris's resourcefulness and quick thinking, while Idris began to understand the depth of Tariq's connection to the desert and his birds. Together, they became a formidable team. One evening, as they sat by their campfire, a flicker of movement caught their eyes. A small group of bandits appeared on the horizon, leading the stolen falcons behind them. Without hesitation, Tariq and Idris sprang into action, working in perfect harmony. Idris distracted the bandits while Tariq snuck past them to free the falcons. The battle was fierce, but their combined efforts led to the defeat of the bandits, and the falcons were returned to their rightful owners. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Tariq and Idris stood together, their falcons perched proudly on their arms. The tournament was forgotten, and the prize falcon no longer mattered. What had been gained through competition was now overshadowed by the bond they had formed through cooperation. The two falconers returned to their respective kingdoms, not as rivals, but as allies. The lesson they had learned was one that transcended borders, a lesson that their kingdoms would come to understand in time. Cooperation, they realized, often achieves more than competition. Alone, they had been limited by their own strengths and weaknesses, but together they had achieved the impossible. They had overcome not just the bandits, but the divisions that had long kept their peoples apart. The moral of the story was clear. Competition may drive individuals to strive for greatness, but it is cooperation that unites them and leads to true success. Tariq and Idris had learned that through working together, they had not only reclaimed what was lost, but had built a friendship that would last a lifetime. Their kingdoms, seeing the power of their alliance, followed their example, setting aside old grudges in favor of peace and unity. And so, the tale of the falcon and the crescent became a symbol of the strength that lies in unity, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories are won not through individual triumphs, but through the bonds we create with others.